This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Welcome to Wandering Grey Bruce. We have ventured north of Wyerton about 30 minutes today, and we are at the east side of the peninsula on the Georgian Bay side. And we have met up with Tamara, who is the president of the Peninsula Bruce Trail Club, and your crew of ladies that...
Yes, other board members.
Yes.
This is Laura Pisco, who is our Director of Conservation and Biodiversity and Land Stewardship, and Brenda Stewart, who is our archivist.
You guys have an amazing group here. I've been following you on Facebook, and you have put together a lot of really neat ventures here at this section of the Bruce Trail, which I didn't realize until I got looking. It's the longest footpath in Ontario.
Yes, that's right. And really, the Bruce Trail is a national treasure. It really is, Krista. In our section, we have 170 kilometers of main trail, approximately, and about 100 kilometers of side trail. Overall, the Bruce Trail from Niagara all the way up to Tobermory is about 900 kilometers long. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
It really is. Now, this is called the Peninsula Bruce Trail Club.
Mm-hmm.
How many other, I guess, sections is how they've divided it up?
Yes, there are 9 sections that the Bruce Trail in its entirety is broken up into. Each section has its own individual club, and and it has its own board and membership that keep the trail clean, do land stewardship, and do all the conservation efforts that happen in each of the individual sections.
And it's all volunteers.
That's the amazing thing. We have about 200 very active volunteers on our section.
Just on your section?
Just on our section alone.
Amazing.
We have 1,000 members and about 200 volunteers that keep this running. Without the volunteers, there would be no Bruce Trail up here.
Definitely, yeah, You're right. Now, if someone wanted to, say, buy a membership, I noticed when I was looking on their website, you buy a membership and that's good for a year?
There are different types of memberships someone can purchase. You can do an individual membership, you can do a family membership, you could do a 1-year membership to try it out, see how you like it. And or you could get a 3-year membership.
Oh, okay.
There's also the ability to purchase a lifetime membership. So you don't have to buy the membership every year. When you get that membership, there are a couple of tools that you might want to use and are highly recommended. Mm-hmm. One is the Bruce Trail reference manual, and it gives you kilometer by kilometer description of each of the sections. And our section number 9 is at the back, which goes from Wyerton to Tobermory. It tells you a little bit about the types of flora and fauna that you could encounter. It talks about some of the First Nations significant cultural areas that you could come across as you hike the entire trail. If you're interested in membership, each of the clubs has a link to the Bruce Trail Conservancy main website, and they are the ones that actually issue the membership. When you get your membership, you can select, I think it's 2 or 1 free club that you can associate yourself. So let's say you wanted to hike the Peninsula section.
Yes.
You would get a free membership to the Peninsula Club, which then gives you access to all of our communications. It lets you know if we're doing a club end-to-end, and we have several club end-to-ends going on right now. And it just lets you know some of the events that are happening. Because one thing I really want to say is that we're not just a hiking club. We have family events. We do some work. We do events with Saugeen Ojibwe First Nation. We do events with the National Park, the provincial parks, and different community groups. So we're very much a community organization up here, and we have lots of diverse activities going on.
Very nice. A very community-focused thing. Now, you mentioned the book is going to be updated.
Yes, the book is going to be updated hopefully by the end of September, and this is issued by the Bruce Trail Conservancy. Another tool to use when you're planning your hikes is the Bruce Trail app. Now, the Bruce Trail app is updated typically within 24 hours because the trail itself is dynamic and changes all the time. So that would be another tool to use when you're planning your hikes.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, Laura, you have a few things going on here behind us that you guys are pretty excited about.
Yeah, very excited. So actually in the reference guide, there is a section on the flora and fauna here on the peninsula. And we're standing on a very interesting spot, which is quite typical actually of the peninsula. You can see the barren rock, limestone rock that's covered with sedum. And something that's very important that a lot of people know about in Canada now is the milkweeds.
The milkweed.
So we're on the migratory path for the monarch butterfly, and what's happened over time, and Brenda will tell you more about this, there was extensive logging. Back when everything was made out of wood, the people came and logged all the forests. So where you see a huge field behind us right now was originally woodland. But a positive thing about that meadow is that we have some of the endangered birds that have taken up residence here. So bobolinks and meadowlarks, for example. So what we're trying to do now is restore this meadow to native plants.
Oh.
So what happened over time was when it was became pasture land, agricultural land, non-native plants, which were brought here inadvertently, started growing, and they can outcompete the native plants like the milkweed that I just showed you.
Right.
So this field is being plowed. We're working with Ducks Unlimited because they're very interested in the wildlife here and the ducks and birds that I've mentioned. And it's being plowed and it'll be seeded with native plants. It'll grow back, and then what happens is in a couple of years we do something called a slow burn.
Right.
So native plants actually have roots that are like meters long. So when you do a slow burn, all the non-native plants actually get killed off because their roots typically are not as deep, but the native plants actually continue to live. So that'll be a process that's undertaken for quite a few years actually until we get back to a native meadowland.
Wow. A huge management plan that you've got scheduled or in the progress with this property.
Yeah.
And Brenda, we're going to go look at some cool sites where there's been some logging done, and you're going to tell us a little bit about the history on the way to the most scenic lookout.
Yes.
That's on this spot.
There's lots to tell, so let's go.
Fabulous. So when Brenda and I were walking this way along with the girls behind, Brenda was talking about the really neat historical factor, which kind of leads us to this section of the property. Logging was huge.
Yep, you have to remember this was probably the last section of Ontario that was opened up to settlers. Prior to 1856, and there was an auction of land for the southern townships, Lindsay was actually not opened up for settlement to sell the lots until 1870. And until 1871, the road had not even reached the southern end of Lindsay Township. So most of the original lots that were sold in Lindsay Township and north in St. Edmunds were sold to speculators, lumbermen, timber barons, because at that time in the late 1800s, there was a incredible demand for lumber, for square masts for England, for building, for sawn logs, etc. And the Bruce Peninsula was covered with huge stands of pine, which they wanted for the squared timbers. So the first individuals, other than the First Nations, who occupied obviously here for millennia prior to that, were the logging companies. A lot of the settlers didn't move in until late 1890s after the logging companies were finished. Between 1860, 1870, when the logging started, until approximately 1914, it's estimated that they removed every merchantable stick of lumber was gone from the peninsula. And that, of course, led to a lot of slash, a lot of branches left on unusable bits of the timber that they were taking down. Caused numerous fires throughout the peninsula. A lightning strike could set off a huge forest fire. So the largest forest fire obviously was in 1908, when most of St. Edmunds Township and half of Lindsay Township burned.
Yeah,
And
I've read that in the books, and
Yeah.
it would just be devastating because families were at poverty levels then, you know,
Yes.
working at sawmills,
Exactly.
trying to
And
put food on the table.
Yeah, and because there's very little, the land up here wasn't very good for agriculture.
Right.
There was tremendous pressure for the government to settle all the immigration that was coming in from Europe. So they were trying to encourage people to come up here and start farms, et cetera. But the reality was, after the lumber was gone and the fires had their way, there wasn't a lot of topsoil left on the limestone escarpment. So a lot of the settlers were in very poverty. They worked in a lot of the lumber camps just to make ends meet.
Yeah.
So it's the relationship between the lumber industry and the settlers coming in is quite contorted and sad. Because when they left, there wasn't much left.
There wasn't much left.
No.
No. And then skipping ahead 100 years, Tamara was saying that you've purchased, not you, but the Bruce Trail Conservancy has purchased this property, which I did not realize that they had that buying power.
Yes, a lot of people think Bruce Trail Conservancy with a capital T, but really it's Bruce Trail Conservancy with a capital C, and that it is a significant conservation body. The Bruce Trail Conservancy does purchase beautiful tracts of land like this 535-acre former farm and residence, which we'll see later. And it was purchased all through donor power. So it was at the time the largest single purchase in Bruce Trail history.
Wow.
And it's now called the Maple Cross Nature Reserve at Cape Chin, and it's part of the Maple Cross portfolio of nature reserves right across Canada.
And now this new project that you are kind of the project manager of, the tree planting that's been going on here, you can see all the little stakes, and
Yeah.
I called it tubex, but it's more like a net.
Mesh, yeah.
So you've got deer on the top you're trying to control and mice on the bottom. So that's a huge feat in itself.
Yeah, so you can see huge stands here behind us of woodlands, which gives you an idea what maybe used to be here. And then over 200 saplings, or actually they're little plugs, because as has been said, the soil here is very rocky, and we have very enthusiastic volunteers, but it's very difficult to dig here. And that's what the farmers found when they were here too. So they are American chestnuts are endangered, and these trees were all donated. Again, we have the donor theme here, by the Canadian Chestnut Council. And they have been trying to find a tree that will start resisting the blight. So the hope is that these trees will flourish, and we have more volunteers who help monitor the trees, make sure that they're flourishing, as well as elm trees, which are also endangered, other problems. These trees, if they are not resistant to the blight, will probably live about 40 to 50 years, but they're going to be huge. They're called the granddaddies of the forest.
Yes.
And then the next step will be to plant smaller shrubs and trees to start having a real woodland experience with those big trees, middle trees, and lower
shrubs,
which
brings
brings
in
animals, the wildlife.
Exactly. Yeah, so you're looking
sustained.
after all levels of the food chain.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to going to the next stop, so we'll move ahead.
Leonard Thompson, 13 years old, diabetes mellitus, 65 pounds.
Starve the child to let them live? The treatment's as cruel as the disease. It's a death sentence.
Dr. Banting.
This could be it.
He's the first to receive this trial.
But will it save him?
It's not pure enough. So we try again. And again. And again.
Before the discovery of insulin, diabetes was a death sentence. Banting, Best, Collip, and MacLeod's breakthrough has saved millions of lives. Leonard Thompson's was the first.
Hi, I'm David Sherman, host of Politically Speaking. Join me for my next show, where my guest will be the Warden of Grey County. Politically Speaking on Rogers TV.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
Thanks again for joining us. We have reached the optimum point that we want to be looking at today. And Tamara, we have picked up a guest on the way through.
Yes, there are many different new relationships that we're exploring with the Bruce Trail, particularly with our First Nations traditional landholders. Right now, the Bruce Trail, the Peninsula Club is honored that we have Jana Shigano, who is a member of Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, has joined our board and helps advise us on how to navigate these new relationships that we're having with our First Nations, partners. Jana sits on our board as a First Nations and Indigenous advisor. So when we're wondering about proper ways of approaching communications or showing the adequate respect, Jana's a great sounding board and helps us determine how to do that properly.
Wonderful. Well, welcome.
Miigwech. I'm just going to introduce myself here. So in my language, hello, Ani Bojo, Jana Chigano, Dijnikas, Mukwadoram, Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, Neya Shingaming, Donjiba, Anishinaabe, and what I've said to you is my name is Jana Chigano. My clan is Bear. I am from the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, Neya Shingaming, or Cape Croker community, and that I am Ojibwe.
Thank you so much for coming. I have a lot to learn. So thank you for coming. I just have a quick question though. When we were coming in, Tamara, we've seen some really cool things coming in.
Yes, there were the beautiful native yellow lady slippers that came in. We also saw some beautiful, even though we have to show its respect, poison ivy, which is also a native plant. So there are many I guess, flora and fauna we can encounter on the Bruce Trail, and we just have to ensure that we show it respect and give it the width, the berth that it requires, so that we don't have any negative interactions.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
There are other hazards that you have to be aware of when you're hiking, such as ensuring that you're hydrated, you have enough water, ensuring that you don't start fires. Currently, right now, we have a forest fire ban, a fire ban on the peninsula. And be aware of water dangers. The water is very cold. It looks blue and beautiful, but sadly, people get in trouble out on the water. And plan ahead, because it is a wilderness area. There are places where you have no cell service. You won't be able to call for help. So always have a plan, contingency plan, ensure you have snacks and waters, prepare for your ride, and be aware of wildlife, because with wilderness comes the wildlife. We have bear in the area, and just ensure we have endangered Massasauga rattlers. Ensure that you give these species at risk their space, and we can all live together in harmony.
Oh, definitely. And another big thing that I'm always an advocate of is proper footwear. It just drives me insane when I see people walking in flip-flops. You have to have really good footwear, especially on the rugged Bruce Trail, because there are areas that are very rugged, and you have to have proper footing. But there's also been some really cool things coming in as well. The flowers have just been gorgeous. Right now, Lady Slipper is in flower, and it's breathtaking, but not as breathtaking as what's behind us here at Cape Chin. If we could see, there is a bit of smog here today because of the forest fires that are going on in Quebec and Northern Ontario. The vantage point here, how far could we see?
We can see all the way to Cape Croker, which is on the Nation-Aming, the Chippewas of Nawash unceded First Nations territory, which is sort of one of the widest parts of the peninsula. Cape Croker really juts out into Georgian Bay, and it's on the southerly-most part of the peninsula, but you can see all the way down. It's probably a good 50 minutes down the road.
Amazing.
And it's just spectacular.
Jenna has joined us, and you have a vision of developing a healing garden here, which is quite interesting. What species would you be thinking of planting here?
Culturally significant species to the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, the territory that we're in, would include sage, tobacco, sweetgrass, just, to name a few. It all depends on what the soil is like too, because
good point.
See, one of the things that's important that I've been taught and that's important to me culturally is that sometimes there's areas where plants aren't because they're not supposed to be there. So as much as we might like to put something there because we're building something that's going to be significant, and we're trying to make it a convenient place and have all of the things that we would dream to have there, sometimes those plants just don't belong there and they won't thrive there. So we're very cognizant in figuring out what works best together. But those are some of the plants that myself I would love to see in a healing garden. It's not only just to have the plants there, but it's also to have whoever's visiting can see those plants, can learn about those plants, can respect those plants, and learn the background to why are they culturally significant and what cultural significance do we give them and what use do we use those plants for. So that all goes into your learning and your reflection when you're visiting this place. That I can just imagine like a healing garden has so many different perspectives to everybody. Everybody who visits it is going to have a different perspective, and those species of plants are just one element of it. But there's so many layers and so many, so much depth to what people can get out of a space like this. So really happy to see that these are coming along and that we're working with our First Nation and Indigenous partners along the trail to bring these places here.
Yes.
To make our histories and our cultures known to visitors of the Bruce Trail. Like the amount of people that go through the trails without ever knowing that they're walking through somebody's traditional territory.
Yes.
We want to create that awareness, and we want to not only let them know that that's what they're doing, but to provide spaces where they can stop and reflect on that and learn. And maybe the healing garden has memorial plaques or historical information that they can either, look at on a physical plaque or a QR code. Just where I'm coming from right now is helping to build awareness, helping to bring education to the people who want to learn it, and doing it in a way that is respectful of people's levels of comfort,
right.
Learning these histories, and also respective of people's comfort of sharing those histories. Because there's a lot of, it takes a lot of courage sometimes to share your history when, there's been a past that is, let's be honest, that hasn't been very nice in terms of First Nation and Indigenous relations with the Crown in these areas. So building on those elements of trust, of truth, of respect, that's something that I see these gardens really being a nice start to those journeys. We hear the word reconciliation a lot these days, reconciliation with First Nation and Indigenous people, and that word can mean a lot of things to a lot of people.
Yes.
And coming to a place like this, a healing garden, that's a place where people can reflect on what that word means to them and what you do with that meaning. It's nice to say that word and nice to say this is what it means to me, but there's also an action there. So I would love to be able to see that one of those actions, not just from First Nation or Indigenous people that practice their cultural beliefs, but from others who want to learn and respect those beliefs as well, that this is a place where, you know, you can come for comfort, for spirituality, for connection, and where First Nation and Indigenous people, and anyone for that matter who wants to learn those practices, can feel safe and comfortable and respected to practice those things here, such as like the laying down of tobacco and meditation or prayer, that this is a place where it's welcome and it's never going to be, you know, somebody's never going to look twice when they see somebody doing it. Yeah. This is a place for that. And the more awareness that we bring using places such as this, I believe it's ground level grassroots that helps those messages spread, that they come from the bottom up. And providing spaces like this right out there in nature is one of the best experiences that we can do. It'll always be 100% better than a slideshow or an internet training. You know,
exactly.
We want people on the land.
Yes, and here, you can't get any closer to nature with the water, the tree, the land. It just all comes together here, and it's the ideal place for that education right here. It is a spectacular view. And have you had any financial assistance in establishing the gardens? Like, is this something that's going to be planned in other sections?
The Bruce Trail Conservancy, being the owners of the land, is working with Plenty Canada, which is a First Nations and Indigenous body that has approached the Bruce Trail, or Bruce Trail has approached them and said, hey, we have this spectacular piece of property. It's a thoroughfare on the main trail, and this would be a beautiful place. It's often referred to as the gem, one of the gems of the entire trail. We would like to share this space with you, and let's make it special together.
It's been an absolute amazing adventure today. Thank you so much, Jenna, for joining us, and I'm wishing you all the best in getting the Healing Garden established, and love to see some plaques and education that comes along with it. And Tamara, wow, this really is the gem. It's been fantastic here with you today. If people wanted to get a little more information about the Bruce Trail, how do they go about it?
The main site is the Bruce Trail Conservancy, Bruce Trail conservancy.org. If you would like to find more information about any one of the sections along the trail, for example, the Peninsula section, usually we go by the acronym, so it's pbtc.ca, and there you'll find all of our organized hikes, any other events that we have planned. And then you can drill down either from the main Bruce Trail Conservancy site to go to the individual sections that you're interested in, or just go straight to, if you do a Google search on any one of the clubs, that information is available.
Wow, amazing. I know the Sydenham Club is the one that's in the Owen Sound area where a lot of our Rogers viewers are. Again, thank you very much, ladies. It's been an absolute fabulous day. And yes, Cape Chin is the gem. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Lovely viewers, it's your host of On the Couch, Antoine El Hashim, reminding you to tune in for every episode of Season 9 of the longest running and most loved local queer talk show on Rogers TV. Check it out.
Sports fans know Sundays are for football. That's why you need NFL Sunday Tickets. With NFL Sunday Ticket, you'll get every live game, every Sunday afternoon.